Start now. Ya. Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to visiting lecture conducted by Accounting Study Program, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret. Our Honorable, the Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Business, Professor Dr. Andes Joko Suharjanto, PhD, our Honorable, the Head of the Accounting Study Program, Mr. Agung Nur Prabohudono, PhD, our Honorable, the Guest Lecturer, Professor Maurizio Massaro, PhD from Ca' Foscari University of Venice, Italy, and our Honorable, the moderator of this event, Mr. Ibrahim Fatwa Wijaya, PhD. And thank you very much for all the participants to join this session. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Rizka Dwi Jayanti. You can call me Rizka. I am a master student of accounting in UNS. And now I will be the master of ceremony of this course. First of all, let us give our praise to our God for his blessing that let us gather in this occasion. And to begin with, I would like to inform you to all the participants that the link for e-certificate, it will be shared in the end of the session. So make sure you join the course until the end and with the camera on. Oh, I also remind you that our professor need your participation via Wood Clap. So get ready to access on www.woodclap.com. Okay, next, I would like to read our agenda of today. For the first is welcoming speech that will be delivered by Mr. Agung Nur Prabohudono, PhD. And the second is Stadium General that will be guided by our moderator, Mr. Ibrahim Fatwa Wijaya, PhD. And the third is the presentation that will be delivered by Professor Maurizio Massaro from Ca' Foscari University of Venice, Italy. And after that, we will have a Q&A session and follow it by the closing session. Okay, well, without any further ado, we are going now to the listen speech delivered by Mr. Agung Nur Prabohudono. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Agung Nur Prabohudono, PhD. The time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Rizka. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon to our honors Professor Maurizio Massaro, PhD. Please accept my warmest greetings, Prof. Maurizio, from Venice, Italia. I've been to Venice also in probably around 2018 or 17 before pandemic. Yeah, very nice city. And also to our moderator today, Dr. Ibrahim Fatwa Wijaya. Thank you, Sheikh Boim. Yeah. Also to my beloved students of accounting study programs, Faculty of Economic, Universitas 11 Maret, Surakarta. First, on behalf of Accounting Study Program, Faculty of Economics, Universitas 11 Maret, let me express my gratitude to Professor Maurizio Massaro that willing to give our students new experience in learning accounting course. In particular, Professor Massaro has been willing to share his knowledge regarding intellectual capital, which is undoubtedly his area of expertise. Welcome, Prof. We wish to get as much knowledge from you, and we wish you will have a good experience with our students. We hope that the topic you will teach today will be able to broaden our students' knowledge in accounting science. I also welcome my student in accounting study program and Faculty of Economic Business. Guys, today you will get a great opportunity to join the study program visiting lecturer, which is actually held regularly for some specific students. But this time, all students of accounting study programs may join this agenda. Last year, this lucky opportunity is being taken by my senior in investment and portfolio theory, Prof. Hoi Che Wei, and also Professor Corina Yosef. At the time, they teach accounting and sustainability reporting, and also Professor Ivan Lau teach in research methodology. Today, because we have very expert Professor Mazaro will be delivered is interesting one of you don't get it regularly in your accounting course, and I see it as an important topic. I invite you to join and learn from the expert in a intellectual capital area. You are usually talk basic accounting and traditional accounting, where you have to calculate profit, loss, company with the main focus of tangible assets. This is because your study time is limited, and we realize that this focus is the most minimal that you have to understand, so that emphasis your learning matter in that way. But today, you will expand your view regarding existence of intellectual capital, which is the capital for sustainability of business. Business capital, such as knowledge, good relationship with customer, or a well-managed database is one of the intellectual capital that is important for you to learn if you want to ensure a business continues to exist and thrive. Thus, to all my beloved students, you know how important today lecture to enrich your knowledge. So please follow today's lecturing in your best shape. Don't take today opportunity for granted, because this is not the usual opportunity to have a great professor from abroad, from Italy, to lecture you. Even if English is your not mother tongue, please still follow the all of the lecture, which is grateful, heart, and high spirit. Take our professors' knowledge as much as you can and try your best, and also not dress off. Okay, guys? I wish this program will go on well and give a lot of benefits to all element involved, all stakeholders involved in this intellectual capital visiting lecture. To once again to Professor Mauricio Massaro, I trust all of your students to you, and please forgive if they have some lack. They may have difficult in English since it's not their mother tongue language. But I also know that our students is pretty smart and have a great will to understand your lectures. Guys, and also Professor, here be, I will officially open this visiting lecture program with Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and enjoy the program. Good evening. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Back to Rizka.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for the speech, Mr. Agung Nur Probo Hudono. And I will remind you to all participants that turn on your camera until the end of the course. Okay, and then we move to the next agenda. Yeah. Now we come to the most awaited session. We will be taught by Professor Maurizio Massaro from Cavuscari University of Venice, Italy. And today we have interesting theme that is intellectual capital. and that it will be guided by moderator Mr. Ibrahim Fatwa Wijaya, PhD. But before that, I would like to introduce and read the CV of moderator. Mr. Ibrahim Fatwa Wijaya, SA, MSc, PhD, is a lecturer in FEB UNS. And on education, he got his bachelor degree from Gadjah Mada University, his master from University of Birmingham, UK, and get his doctoral degree from Cranfield University of UK. He has a lot of experience in research, and his main interest is in Islamic financial topics. All right, any further ado, Mr. Ibrahim, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Rizka. Hello and hello. Welcome to today's visiting lecture. I'm super excited to having Professor Massaro and all of you here. And I'm excited about intellectual capital conversation that we are going to have today with Professor Massaro. Before we listen to Professor Massaro's lecture, I would like to introduce to all of you our special professor today. So Professor Massaro currently is an associate professor at Ca' Foscari Venice University in Italy. He has expertise not only in intellectual capital, but also in strategy, performance measurement, and sustainability. He has also international experience, both as researcher and lecturer from all around the world, such as from Hong Kong Polytechnic University, George Washington University in USA, St. Petersburg University in Russia, Macquarie University in Australia, Leicester University in UK, and many more. Professor Massaro has also published in many top-tier journals, such as Journal Intellectual Capital, Accounting, Auditing, and Accountability Journal, Management Decision, and many more. Currently, he serves as editorial committee in several journals, such as Fine Journal of Information and Knowledge Management Systems, Management Decisions, Meditary Accounting Research, Meditary Accountancy Research, Management Control, and Journal of Knowledge Management. That's a short introduction to our visiting lecture today. If you want to know him more, you can open his website, www.mauriciomassaro.eu. So Professor Massaro will discuss intellectual capital, I think for about 1.5 to 2 hours, Prof. So it's plenty of time. And I would like to remind you that in today's lecture, we'll have question and answer session. You could write the question to Professor Massaro through the Zoom chat during his lecture. At the end of this lecture, I can read the question for you and Professor Massaro will discuss your question. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Massaro. The time is yours.
Thank you so much for the kind words that you said, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a big pleasure being here, and that's one of the, one of the few nice things that the pandemic brought us. The opportunity of being basically anywhere in the world with just one click, and that would be that's really something that we should think. It's intellectual capital as well, it's knowledge as well that we should build on in order to somehow take the good thing that this bad pandemic brought us. So Ibrahim, thank you so much again for inviting me. I will try to share the screen, if it is okay to you. Let's see if it works. Yes, it should. Now you should be able to see my screen. Is that correct?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, so I will also try to have a very, I don't want to say, my intent is to be engaging and to have you guys engage, even though we are not in the same room and we are actually far away. I will try to use one app, which is called Book Club. So what I would ask you is to use a QR code application. Just, you should see the QR code there. If you just use the QR code up, I'm trying to do it myself. And then you go to the website. You should be able to see the VooClap website. There's nothing there now. Yes, exactly. And I will try to use this app to somehow, ask you questions, and then you will be able to interact with me. I will use some polls, something that, especially at the beginning, because, time is pretty tight because we have less than 2 hours for a very broad topic. So especially at the beginning, I will try to have a more engaging type of lessons, okay? So I can see only 16 people have been able to connect. So just give some time to people to be able to connect. So I will use maybe this time while you are there just to say something more about my university. Ca' Foscari University is one of the top university in Italy. Is the oldest business school in Italy and the second one in Europe. Of course, we have a strong tradition due to Marco Polo with Asian countries, and we collaborate with many countries. As I said, we are among the top 5% recognized by our Ministry of University as a top university in the country. My department, which is management, is among the top 300 departments in the QS ranking, just recently released. So, and of course, we are in a very nice location as the Venice. I don't know if you have ever been here, but it's really nice. And another thing that the pandemic brought to us was less tourism around. So it's really enjoyable now, the city. You can walk, there are no cars, no traffic, and less people around. As I said, just few things. We are trying to see, the glass as empty full rather than empty, half empty, and half full rather than half empty. So, okay, you can see people are joining the conversation. I will try. So if the QR code doesn't work, no worries. You can just type on the browser of your computer, of your phone. It's www.vooclap.com. Just please remember to put those letters, that code here, in capital letters. So it's LMONPG, all in capital letters. Okay. So if you don't have the phone or QR code app, don't worry, just type that on the phone or in the computer. You should be able to to take part to the conversation that we're going to have in a while. Okay, I can see it's okay. Still someone is connecting. Just let's wait for, okay. Okay, still a few seconds. I can see numbers are growing. Okay, so just to continue, so we won't waste time because, as I said, we have a very broad topic to discuss about today. Basically, the discussion will be divided in 5 main parts. The first part will be just an introduction to why intellectual capital and knowledge is becoming so crucial. As I was said, I'm a professor of strategic management accounting, so I will try to link my speech not too much to very, accounting principles, but more to the strategic part, how to basically use intellectual capital to develop your company. And of course, I will also provide some concepts, mainly connected with accounting. So the first part will be somehow, I have a video which lasts for 6 minutes, where I will try to to provide you some data and to let you think about what knowledge economy means. Okay. After that part, I will say, okay, we will somehow use a very historical perspective on intellectual capital, going back to the 90s, mid-90s, basically, to the most recent research on the topic. And that's basically will be the four main stages that literature recognizes based on intellectual capital. Okay, so I can see now we have 100 people around, more or less. Okay, let's see if it works. Now, if you look at your phone, you should have the first question, which is pretty easy. Does it work? So I guess you all answer, yes, it works. Just remember that you have also to push not only yes, but also submit. Okay, it's pretty similar. It's very similar to WhatsApp on the other tools like this one. So basically what will happen is that while I go ahead on the questions, your phone will change with the new questions that will be basically provided to you. Some of those will be just polls like this one. Others will be where you can post some sentences, and I will try to elaborate the sentences while you are providing them. Okay, you can see, yeah, there's one person that says, no, it doesn't work. Pretty funny. Okay. Just one thing, as I said, please remember there is no filter. And since our lesson is recorded, just try to be polite in your opinion that you express. Okay. So because there's no filter, I decided to have no filter. Okay. I can see, people you are voting. And as I always said, it should be pretty hard to you understanding me, guys, because as it was said, I'm Italian and I spent some time in the United States, which means that I speak American English, which means I have all the bad habits that Americans have, like, gotta, gotcha, all this wanna, all these slang things. And unfortunately, as Mick Jagger used to sing, bad habits die hard. So I didn't lose those habits. So I hope that, even though I have my Italian accent and I'm using those American slangs, you will be able to understand what I'm saying. Okay. So, okay, guys, I can see half of you voted. Okay, that was just a test. I can see numbers are growing now. Okay. Okay, just wait to see. Okay, okay. I have also 10 people, as you can see on the phone on the top here, you have 10 people said, okay, I'm confused. Okay, so if you have something that you don't understand and you want to elaborate, a little bit better your question, just use the chat of Zoom. So I'll be able to understand what's going on, what are the problems that you are facing. Okay, because otherwise it would be a little bit difficult to me. Okay, let's see, the chat is here. Okay, no one is, okay, please see, okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, numbers are growing. Okay. Okay. So, okay, we still have 30 people that, didn't vote. Okay, so if you agree, it was just a test to see if it works. And it seems that it is working. You will see it's on the chat, the link that you have to use. And additionally, let's see if I can move this thing here. No, nope, there's no way. Yep, I can move it here. You can also see on the top here, it will be reported the link that you have to use. So having said that, we can move to our to the lesson. So a few words about myself. You heard enough about me. So let's go to our agenda. As I told you, we are basically splitting the agenda with the first part, which is basically introducing the topic of the knowledge economy and why knowledge economy is important. Then we will go through the 4 main stages that basically have been recognized within the IC research. And as I said, we will start with a small video, which is this one. Just let me know if you can hear it. It's 6 minutes. It's basically a collection of facts by Jose Estevans that works in Spain, and it's very interesting. And I will try to let you think about some of those facts and why they are very important in leading the knowledge economy. Okay, so it's 6 minutes. It's a bit longer than I want, but it's really interesting. So I hope you will enjoy it. Just let me know if you can hear it.
Yes, you can hear it.
Okay. So, as I said, it was a bit longer that, what I wanted, but that's the last release of the video, so I decided to leave it as it was. And now I'm asking you, so if you take your phone again, I would like to know what are the key messages that you got from the video. So just, sorry, it's like a messenger, like write your a key idea, just put submit, yeah. Everything will be displayed automatically in my video here. Okay, just give time to everyone to write. I can see your messages are growing. I can see technology is the most important part, data, big data, internet, massive growth of technology, human intelligence, artificial intelligence, new job in new area, interesting, absolutely. What was that? Okay, discovering something new, interesting, time, ready, very, very interesting suggestions you are providing. Digital era is coming, absolutely. It's already here, I would say. And of course, that will have a lot of impacts. I can see banks, fintech, what was it? Okay. Revolution Industry 5.0. Okay. Rapid, timeless. So very, very interesting comments you provided. Let's try maybe to have a different view here. I can see you basically all agree on some very, very key words that I can see, shift happens, freedom, disruption, new change, technology again, fintech. Are you a lecturer? Are you a lecturer? I'm associate professor, actually. Probably you didn't like the video. I'm sorry for that, but I will try to show you why this is so important. Okay. So, okay, let's try to understand. Okay, this was very interesting, but this is something that you are in between, you're in this big change and you actually don't understand, but let's try to put it on a more economic perspective and maybe in a more accounting perspective and try to see why this is so important. And to better understand that, let's say, what if I tell you that you won a set of pots, you won a set of pots for cooking or something. will you believe me or not? Okay, I can see. I have to say from the first beginning, I'm really surprised about how many people believe it. Usually, especially in Western countries, the normal answer is no. Let's see how it goes now. Yeah, I can see now no is getting much more power as an answer. And let's see people. So let's wait still a little bit so we can try to understand. Okay, so most of the people don't believe me if I tell you that you won a set of pods. And the interesting part is that if I ask you why you don't you believe me? What is the main issue? Why don't you think that people could give you for free a set of pods? The most common answer that I get when I ask this part is because no one gives you anything for free. Okay, this is the most common, at least in Western countries. This is the most common answer that I get. Why people don't believe that you can want something actually for free. Well, but then speeding up a little bit, guys, the part to try to go directly to the point is, but what if I ask you if you have one of those? And do you have Facebook? Do you have Google Plus? Do you have WhatsApp? Do you have LinkedIn? Do you have Twitter? Well, most of the people answer yes. I didn't put the answer. I can see that people are confused, so we try to make my point clear. So my point here is that, you know, the first part was there is the digital revolution. We all know that. Then I stopped a little bit, say, okay, let's put that on the backstage a little bit, and let's focus on a very simple question. Question is, do you think that you can win something for free? And most of the people said, no, I don't believe that. Nothing gives you anything for free. But then I ask you a second part, which was, do you have one of those products? Well, you know, I didn't ask, but I'm sure that if you put all together, the answer is 100% of you have at least one of those products. Then the question is, how much are you paying for those products? Well, the actual answer is nothing. So that's a problem. Why don't you think that you can't get a free set of pods while you believe that you can get a free product like LinkedIn, WhatsApp, or Twitter for free? You know, this is a big difference. You know, you might think that those are not companies. Then if this is your opinion, I strongly suggest you to go and see how much they are worth in the listed markets. You will discover that not only they are big companies, they are among the most capitalized companies in the world. So again, why do we have that difference? Why you think that you can get a set of pods for free, while it is absolutely normal for you to get one of those products for free? And how is that possible? Getting a product for free. You know, accounting 101, basically you study that you basically have some inputs, then you collect those inputs that become some inventories, then you sell them and you get a price for them. Okay? If you go back to everything you learn in accounting, everything works basically as a transaction. You call it actually a transaction in accounting 101. Okay? How is this business model, how could this business model fit traditional accounting roles? And how is it even possible that a company that is among the most capitalized company in the world can give you a product for free? Where is the trick? Okay? Well, if we try to understand what stays behind this, is a very basic accounting rule, and is the concept of marginal cost. Okay, I assume you all know the concept of marginal cost, but the concept of marginal cost, if you are not aware of the concept, is basically the cost you get for getting one extra unit of the product. Well, what happens in digital products is the marginal cost of those products is close to zero. It is not zero, but pretty close to zero. And why is that? Because if you have a physical product like this one, my pen here, and I have to give it to you for free, then the problem is that the raw material that I employ to develop and to build my pen, I will need it again to have a second pen. If I develop something like a big, server system like Facebook, the fact that I'm giving, an account to a person doesn't mean that I can't give an extra account to another person. And this makes the marginal cost pretty close to zero. And that opened a totally new economy where companies can give their products for free. Why? Because the marginal cost is close to zero. And what I need in exchange for giving the product for free, because my marginal cost is close to zero, is just a little money, which I usually can get from the data you are providing in exchange for the service that you are getting. And this created the free economy, where free means free of charge economy. Okay, so that created a total new context. And how is that possible? That's possible due to the fact that those products, the digital products, are mainly based on knowledge. And differently from all other resources that you learn about, knowledge cannot be consumed by being used. You don't consume knowledge. It does, in actual fact, it increases its value the more you use it, because the more you use it, the more you are able to improve the knowledge that you have. And so the value grows rather than decreasing. Basic amortization rule that you learn. Okay, our recording stopped. So can I go ahead? Just let me know if I can go ahead, or if you want, if there's a technical problem. Can I go ahead?
Mbak Rizka, recordnya stop.
Okay, wait. I will tell the admin first.
It's okay.
No, it's okay. Please continue your presentation, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So, so basically, as I said, it's because knowledge, standard accounting 101, you learn about amortization. Amortization is the process where something that lasts for more than 1 year, it loses value because you are using it. Well, knowledge doesn't have amortization because you don't consume it. It doesn't lose value because you're using. In actual fact, it increases value. And because these knowledge products, these digital products are mainly based on knowledge, they have totally different rules. And it's so important and so disruptive that they are changing the business model of the companies, and they are basically attacking the basics of accounting. Accounting 101, transaction. You get the raw material, through the raw material, you produce the product that you can then sell. Here you produce a product and you're able to give it for free and get something in exchange that you can sell to someone else. Okay, I will go a little bit deeper on this logic. As I told you, I'm a professor of strategic management accounting, so I'm always trying to connect, accounting with strategy. I hope you can, follow the whole discourse that I'm trying to build here and to show you. So that's why this is so important. All those facts that maybe you were even aware of, because you can read basically everywhere. But if you look at them, using, an accounting, an economic perspective, then they all assume a totally different meaning for you. Because it means that company can grow having different business models. They can even give the products for free, but this is just one example. We can build and go ahead for, hours talking about emerging and new business models like subscription business models, and I can go on ahead giving many more examples to you. But basically, this is probably the most important one, even one of the easy. So that's why it's so important, and that's why we have to stop and think about this role of intangibles, this role of knowledge, with a totally different perspective, because it's attacking the basics of accounting, providing a new perspective. And that was my point. Is that okay? I can see 12 people are still confused. Please, if you have any questions and you want to give me, to repeat it, to try to be a little bit, to go a little bit deeper on the topic, then just, if you can type something on the chat, and I will be more than happy to provide you further details. So please, if that was a mistake, just have a look at on the top of on the app. You have this "I'm confused," just unflag it, so we'll know that you push it by mistake, or maybe the problem you had, it's gone, so you got everything. Nope. Okay, it's okay. So okay, thank you. So I can go ahead. So okay, this was the basic of the knowledge-based view, and that's, as I said, started in the literature of strategy and in management, basically, where basically the knowledge-based view is the theory that puts knowledge as the most strategically significant resource and important resource of a company. Its proponents argue that because knowledge-based resources are usually difficult to imitate, they are socially complex, heterogeneous knowledge bases and capabilities among firms are the major determinants of sustained competitive advantage and superior corporate performance. Just to give you, maybe you learn about the Porter, perspective. This goes a little bit further in the 80s, where this movement started. Intellectual capital research basically grounds on the knowledge-based view of the company and has been developed within the knowledge-based theory of the firm in the 80s. But in actual fact, while in the 80s was just at the beginning, it's only in the 90s that actually research on IC starting getting really traction, being very, very important. And in actual fact, it didn't start because of academics, it started because of managers. And one of the key elements that let that movement start was because of an accounting reasons. And the accounting reason was in the first stage, let me go through that, because what happens was that scholars discovered that, tangible assets that are normally provided in accounting, they were able to represent a small part of the total value of the company. And what happened was that in 1982, basically, tangible assets were able to represent 62% of the Standard & Poor's 500 companies' total value, while in 2002, so basically 20 years later, they were able to represent less than 18% of the total value. And if we focus on the top companies in 2002 regarding their market capitalization, you could see that most of them, the percentage was even higher. 96% was for Coca-Cola. 94% for Microsoft, 85% for Intel. So what happened was that traditional accounting rules were unable to represent the real value of the company. And in actual fact, there was something that, traditional accounting rules were unable to explain, which was something that was labeled as intellectual capital, intangible assets, I don't know, talking about Coca-Cola, so I will try also to give you some break on the topics. But if you go to Atlanta, where the headquarters of Coca-Cola is, there is the Coca-Cola Museum. And then it's very nice because you can, have a walk and they'll explain you the history of Coca-Cola. And then when you, end up at the end of the tour, there is this big safe, and then they tell you that behind that door, it seems like something that you have in the movies, the big wheel, the biodata, the scanning of your data to enter. And they tell you behind the door, there's the Coca-Cola formula. Because there is this idea that the formula of Coca-Cola is actually the real value of Coca-Cola. Well, 10 years ago, a professor of finance of the New York Stewart University, Aswath Damodaran, he studied the value of Coca-Cola, and he discovered that more than 80% of the value of Coca-Cola was because of its brand, not because of the formula. Because everyone, know about Coca-Cola, and that's really the driver of the value of Coca-Cola. And this created this big change. In the 90s, we started from accounting to understand why, the traditional measures we had were unable to measure the value of a company. But that was the beginning, as always, when you start learning something and study something, there is not even a clear definition. So what was the first stage of IC was about trying to understand and define the concept of intellectual capital. So what was this intellectual capital, those intangibles, especially because we had different words for using it, like intangible assets, intellectual capital, intellectual properties. Those concepts were somehow mixing up, And so the first stage was about understanding the meaning of intellectual capital. And as I said, we had different definitions. For example, Financial Accounting Standard Board defines intangible assets as assets having no material from that appear as a result of 1, past events that has a 2, measurable effect, and that presents a 3, future benefit. Baudrillard said, assets arising as a result of past events and processes, 3 main attributes. They are non-physical in nature, capable of producing future economic net benefits, and they are protected legally or through a defecture right. So even if you compare those 2 elements, as you can see, the fact that they are legally protected or through a defector right, it's not the same. So if you narrow down, this is a very narrowed down definition of intellectual capital. Intangible assets, sorry. But then we had someone like Professor Baruch Lev who said, non-physical sources of value generated by innovation, discovery, unique organizational design, or human resource practices. So as you can see here, this legally protected thing is somehow losing traction. Any assets belonging to a company or controlled by it, having no physical or financial form, but capable of producing financial economic benefit. And I can go ahead, just to try to, show you how the whole literature was evolving. Nowadays, we have a more defined concept as intangible as, built using 3 main pillars. The first one is human capital, which means basically that nowadays we believe that intellectual capital is basically all the knowledge that we have in that belongs to our employees, to the people that work in our organization. Then we have relational capital, which is basically the capital that stays, the knowledge that stays within our connection, in our relationships. It's the power of the brand, and but also relationships with suppliers. I've been working, for example, in a country like Iran, because we have this most innovative knowledge enterprise award. I'm responsible for Italy. And usually what we have is we visit companies that we give basically an award to the most innovative knowledge enterprises. And usually we have visits, and foreigner professor visits companies of different countries. And so I was assigned to Iran. And so I visited Iran different times. And one of the things that I discovered was that for them, for example, relationship with the government was very important, because they work in a very strictly ruled system. So getting relationship with the government was very important, because rules were very, very important for them. Suppliers, as I said, but any other relationship that a company might have. And of course, we have what it is called organizational or structural capital, which means the knowledge that you can put in your organization in procedures. It might be patents, but doesn't have to be a patent. It might be also a procedure you have in your organization, even a software that stays within your organization. So to give you an example of intangible assets: human capital, capability of innovations, creativity of the person that work with the organization, know-how and experience, ability to work in a team, motivation, learning capabilities, and so on. Those are capabilities of a company to benefit from knowledge, skill, and experiences of employees, which immanently pertain to the latter. And this is also called the company, the capital that leaves your company at 5 p.m. because employees leave the company. So the capital goes away with them, okay? Relational capital, as I said, capability of a company to benefit from resources connected with the company's external relations, like brands, relationship with suppliers, loyalty of the customers, distribution channels, business corporations, alliances and partnerships. Those are all very key elements. Structural capital, as I said, it might be more, defined in something like patents, trademarks, service marks, copyrights, but it might be also in infrastructural assets like corporate culture, internal administration of the workflow, information system, as I was saying before. So if you have a look here, you have, I wasn't able to provide you the paper, but this is a paper that I wrote with, two colleagues. One is Professor Carlo Bagnoli from my university, Ca' Foscari University. Second one is Professor John Dumais from Macquarie University. Basically, what we did here was basically we consider all the papers that we were able to find that provided a very detailed definition of intellectual capital. And we basically counted all the items that they considered as important items for intellectual capital. So as part of human capital, as part of relational capital, as part of structural capital. So you see that, for example, 24 papers provided education as a key element of human capital. 20 papers provided brand as a key element of relational capital. 21 papers provided a very, considered important patents and intellectual property as part of structural capital. Here you have the whole list in the paper of items we found, within literature. Then what we said was, okay, but this is the, academic perspective. Why not considering investors' perspective and see, if those are the elements that, scholars believe are important, why not considering investors? And so what we did, we basically analyzed comments from Yahoo Finance. We downloaded 166,000 messages in 1 year. So basically 200,000 messages on the top 10 companies due to their market capitalization. And we actually developed a content analysis on these 166,000 messages and compare results from what was important for investors, so what they were talking about, and what was important for scholars. And that was surprisingly. You know, we found that was surprising because we found really big differences. As you can see, for example, in the framework, you know, for example, training was very important for academics, while, you know, investors didn't care actually about the training provided by the company. What was much more important for them was the management quality. That, as you can see here, was important only for a very few scholars. So what I'm trying to say here is that even though intellectual capital started in the 1990s, we still have so many things that we have to learn about how to define it, about what actually matters. Because as you can see from this table, we do have big differences compared to what, you know, investors are taking, you know, into consideration when they speak about a company, future investment opportunities, the real value of the company, and what actually matters in the framework provided by scholars. We do have things that, you know, they both agree, like customers is very important both for, you know, scholars and investors. But for example, market share is a key element of the stock message board, but only 4 papers mention it as a key element of the relational capital. So as you might understand, this is really important if you are a manager of a company, and you have to understand 2 things. The first one is you have to understand your intellectual capital for increasing the value of your company. But also, if you are an accountant and you have to provide detailed information about your intellectual capital to investors, then you have to understand what matters for them. And the result of our study was that if you focus on well-published studies on intellectual capital, then you will provide something that is not so meaningful for your investors. Because your investors believe that market share, the distribution channel, relationship with government, you know, those are very important pieces of information that you have to provide. And not so important if you look at the very established frameworks, okay? So even though this discussion started more than 20 years ago, there is so much that we still have to learn about it, okay? And if we go back about how interacting with investor, which is a typical accounting topic, is evolving, because, you know, 20 years ago, you had the basically the financial statements. And that was the only way you had to interact with your investors. Now you have platforms where actually your investor not only can interact with you, but they can also interact each other. So the discussion is becoming much more complex. And if you still don't understand what you actually have to provide as a relevant pieces of information, then your job will be pretty hard. You know, you will have troubles in actually, you know, letting your investors to understand the real potentiality of your company. Because intellectual capital, as you said at the beginning, is the actual driver of the value of your company. Okay? Okay, so if you have any questions, things that you want to discuss with me, please, I know we have a Q&A session at the end of my presentation, but if something is not clear, please just let me know so I can repeat it without waiting, because this is only the first stage. We still have 3 stages to go through. Okay?
Mr. Maurizio, I want to ask, in structural capital, innovation is important thing. Why Coca-Cola bigger than Microsoft for intangible asset? How to measure it for intangible asset?
Okay, how to measure it? Okay. So innovation is really important, as you said. It's actually a driver of a big driver of the value of a company. And in actual fact, Coca-Cola is providing a lot of innovation. So let's stop it and think about the business. And I'm providing you 2 different examples of different approaches to innovation in very similar, in business that actually at the moment are having similar issues. So the first one is Coca-Cola, as you mentioned. The last one, I'm not sure if you are aware, is Ferrero, is Nutella. Do you know the product Nutella? Yes, I assume you all know Nutella. So why those products are very similar? Those products are very similar for the same reason. And the reason is that, unfortunately, they are pretty good. At least I like both of them, but they are both unhealthy. They actually can harm your health. You know, for Coca-Cola, I don't know if you are watching the, the Europe League of Soccer. There was this big thing with, the soccer player Ronaldo that put away the Coca-Cola bottles saying, please drink water. Okay, so the main issue with Coca-Cola is that their main product is unhealthy. So how they are addressing the topic? Well, they are working trying to make, why is their product unhealthy? Because it's full of sugar. Okay, there's a lot of sugar there, and that's why the product has so many calories. So what are they trying to do? They are trying to remove the sugar. So do you have the Coca-Cola Light, the Coca-Cola Zero, and all these kind of products? Okay, so their innovation at the moment is focused on trying to skip this big problem that their label has. And it's a big problem because, in actual fact, as we said at the beginning, the a key asset in the organizational capital of the company is the formula. Well, maybe you are not aware, you are very young, so you're not aware of that. But in 1985, they tried to change the formula. They developed the new Coke. And it was, so for a while, and they spent a lot of money in advertising this new formula. And what happened was that it was before internet. They were, really overwhelmed by mails, physical mails saying, please bring me back my Coca-Cola. The new Coke is good, it's not bad, but it's not my Coca-Cola. So what happened was that Coca-Cola discovered that in actual fact, their product was linked to the experience of the customer. Because Coca-Cola for all their customers meant and still means connection with, like, birthday parties or, parties with friends, it was emotionally connected. So what they did, they started to make the product healthier. But if we go back and look at, for example, the commercial of Coca-Cola, then you will see that they have something, probably it's even in Indonesia, taste the feelings. So they moved their innovation. At the beginning was trying to make their product healthier, but in actual fact, if you have a look at the sales, it's not working because people still want the old Coca-Cola. And to make it a little bit, and to keep the sales, they are trying to connect it. They learn from the past experience, and they are trying to build what it is called the experience economy, okay? Trying to link the product with the experience. Different situation was about Nutella. Nutella still has a product which is unhealthy, in that case for the high calories that the product provides. What Ferrero is trying to do now, instead of making their product healthier and losing the taste, the original taste, they are trying to portionize the product, make little portions, like, I don't know if you have there, Nutella Be Ready, okay, Kinder cards. So it's a small portion of the product that, however, it's enough to fill you with the sense of being satisfied by the consumption of the product. So two different, completely different approaches about how to deal with these issues. How to measure that, that's a big problem. Of course, you know, still you are trying to keep sales, to keep profitability. So traditional measures nowadays might try to think if the strategy you are applying is working or not, okay? But as you said, innovation doesn't necessarily go through the product innovation or technology innovation. You might also have innovation based on social innovation, like what now Coca-Cola is doing with the commercials, saying taste the difference, taste the feeling, sorry, or what you know, Ferrero is trying to do in this portionized consumption. Measuring it, it's really, really a big problem. But at least if you know the strategies that they are applying, you can have a look at the standard numbers, like, you know, return on investment ratios, you know, sales growth, and all traditional numbers that you learn in accounting, and see if these approaches are working or not. Okay, I can see I have two more questions. Let me read it. So, hello, Prof. My name is Agung. Hello, Agung. I'm a student in accounting study program. I want to ask about something. Is it possible, if the amount of intangible assets value decreases from its origin value that a business already stated, what reasons that possibly degrade the benefit of the intangible asset ownership? Yes, I will ask you to wait a little bit, because we have, you know, intellectual liabilities, which is something that goes a little bit, it started talking a little bit later in the academic discussion. So if you can hold your question, and I will try to answer it later on my lesson, okay? Then I have a second one. Hello, my name Ricky. Hello, Ricky. How Coca-Cola maintain? Okay, this is the question that probably I ask. How Coca-Cola maintain its intangible assets value from outside influence? As we know, when Ronaldo moved Coca-Cola bottle and said drink water is better, it created a big news around the world and might be decreasing its intangible assets value. How Coca-Cola maintain its value on the value won't decrease? Let me see if let me know if my answer was enough and you got it, everything I wanted to give you. Since intellectual capital is an intangible assets like other assets which grow by time, so does IC. How many measures IC grow in a how can measure IC grow in a company? Okay. Also for this one, this is the second stage. So please, you know, if you can hold that question, I will try to answer it in a while. Okay. For Coca-Cola, just let me know if it is okay about what I said. Okay. Let me check the time. Still 1 hour, so still on track. Okay. Thank you so much, Ricky. So let's try to answer the second question, which is, you know, at the beginning, the first stage was, okay, let's try to understand what we mean for intellectual capital. And this is the first stage. Then, of course, because we are, you know, we all are accounting scholars, then the second stage is, let's try to measure it. How can we measure accounting? So the second stage was really a very productive period that in the beginning of the 2000, the new millennia, was focused on trying to measure intellectual capital. Okay, I have already said this. And of course, as Giorgio Diorn said, if you can measure it, you can manage it. And Kaplan and Otto said, measuring the value of intangible asset is the holy grail of accounting. And that's actually very complicated and very difficult. And that's why I will provide you, and I will show you that there are so many different frameworks that you can use to basically measure intellectual capital. So the first step was the idea that somehow we have the market value, then we can split it in two parts, something that it might be connected with tangible assets and something that connects with intangible assets. And of course, then we have human capital, relational capital, structural/organizational capital. So if this is the idea, then why not trying to somehow measure intangibles as we measure for tangibles? So, I could count more than 35 plus different methods for measuring intellectual capital. So, of course, starting from the 50s, actually, even though it was not called intellectual capital, but there was this idea of measuring intangibles in the mid 50s. So, and the list is not closed, everyone, you might find different methods. Sometimes even, it's let's say a variance of an existing method. Okay. So myself, with some colleagues, wrote a specific method for developing countries of applying the Weik method for measuring intellectual capital. So trying to adapt existing models to specific contexts. But let's say without having the ambitions of being, exhaustive, let's try to develop at least 4 main groups that we can use to measure intangibles. And the first one is a group called direct intellectual capital methods. The second one is market capitalization method. The third one is return on asset methods. The last one is scorecard methods. For each method, I will provide you some examples for each family, let's say. I will try to provide you an example of specific methods that can, stay within that family, just to provide you an idea about the different methods used to measure intellectual capital. So basically, direct intellectual capital methods, they estimate the value of intangible assets by identifying its various components. So basically, once these components are identified, they can be directly evaluated, either individually or as an aggregated coefficient. So basically, the idea is that let's try to identify each component of the intellectual capital, and let's try to measure it specifically. Then if we can put all the elements together, then we will get the total value of the company. And if we subtract the value of tangible assets, we will have the value of intellectual capital. So, so basically calculate the difference between a company, the second method, and of course here you have specific methods for measuring brand rather than measuring, patents. And it's really, if you have a look at any accounting book, you will see different methods for measuring specific assets. Okay. The second one is market capitalization method. It's basically much easier. It basically says, okay, if the value of a company is the sum of tangible plus intangibles, and I can know the value of a company from the listed market, why not defining it as a difference? So calculate the difference between a company's market capitalization and its stockholders' equity as the value of its intellectual capital. So basically, if the market capital is 12 billions, we have a stockholder equity of 1 billion, that means that IC is 11 billions, okay? Because that's everything that doesn't stay within your accounting book. It's intangible, it's intellectual capital. It's not properly measured by your accounting approach. And of course, this is often used, especially from economic studies, you know, especially if you want to compare nations. One of the key elements that, you know, I will talk about that in the fourth stage, but one of the things that is happening is that it's emerging an ecosystem perspective. So, you know, what we are discovering is not only that intellectual capital brings companies to be able to succeed, but brings also nations to be able to succeed, business ecosystems to be able to succeed. So that means that even economic studies are now looking at intellectual capital. Even policymakers are strongly considering intellectual capital in developing their policies for developing countries. And of course, if this is the approach that you have to use, then, you know, the first one method that I introduced, going to all the items of the AC, is not doable. You need a broader measure, and this is the solution. So you can put together all the data of your listed companies, and you can have a proxy of the intellectual capital of your nation. Okay? If all your listed companies have a market value that is strongly represented by tangible assets, not that good for the development of the country. Okay? There is a book from Professor Leif Edvinsson, for example. He analyzed the crisis of 2008, and he compared results from Greece, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Ireland. And what he discovered was that intellectual capital was measured in this way, was showing the signs of the global economic crisis way before than the economic crisis actually happened, because there was a decrease in the main measures of listed companies. I will talk a little bit later about that. But just to give you an idea, these very simple measures are not actually used by accountants, but most are used by economic scholars, so scholars that try to have a broader perspective. Return on asset methods, we have a lot of, you can have a lot of details here. For example, if you have a look at the economic value added, that, as you know, it basically compares the NOPAT, net operating profit after tax, minus invested capital multiplied weighted average cost of capital. In the part where you can see the invested capital, well, the method provides you some detailed explanations about how to increase invested capital to account for intangibles. Okay. Additionally, the increasing ability of the company of increasing economic value is also considered as a sign of intellectual capital, of the fact that intellectual capital is productive. Other measures are the scorecard methods. Probably you learn about the balanced scorecard that has a specific section on intangibles. So the various components of intangible assets of intellectual capital are identified as indicators, and indices are generated and reported in scorecards or as graphs. Kaplan and Norton might be your reference, and here you have the part, and you see that intellectual capital stays within the learning and grow part, okay? Mainly stays here. I won't go, we are running out a little bit out of time. I assume you already know about balance scorecard, since it's a very basic concept in accounting classes. So if you still haven't heard about it, I'm pretty sure you will learn how it works in the near future in your career. So let me skip it. Other examples similar to the balance scorecard is the Scandia Navigator, used in 1994 by the company, the insurance company Scandia. This is really interesting because basically not for the measure, but for the process. Basically, it was developed by Professor so one of the first scholars that actually studied intellectual capital, and it's basically divided in 3 steps. The first one is visualizing IC. So the measurement process first requires you to visualize intangibles. Then the second step is about the human capital injection. So how you can increase your intellectual capital, injecting new competencies. The third phase concerns the systematic transformation of human capital into structural capital. So basically the idea is to put the knowledge from your employees into procedures that anyone can apply. So you will not depend on that specific employee. And the fourth phase requires an external structural capital injection. So basically where you try to combine formalized procedures and to create something new. Let me try to give you an example. So when I was in Iran, one of the companies that I visited, they were basically trying to develop a specific software for measuring some aspects of their production process. Was a chemical company, and they had an internal team for developing the software. Well, my main concern when I was there was it's very interesting because basically this software can provide you a big efficiency improvement, which is very important for the performance of the company. But my main concern is be aware that you are becoming dependent on those employees. You must formalize the process, the procedure, while you are developing your internal software. Because otherwise, if the employees leave the company, then you will lose the knowledge of the software that you developed. And if you lose that knowledge, you won't be able to adapt it in the future. Or it will cost you a lot of money to go back, understand the code, how it was developed, and all these steps. So that was my idea, to move from IC visualization, human capital injection. They hired these software people to develop that, but then you need to formalize in something that, of course, everyone can use a software, but then you need to formalize the process about the maintenance of the product, of the software in this case. Okay. So second stage. Third stage was something that, where IC became a little bit more managerial. And the idea was how to manage IC. And the idea of managing IC, here is another video I strongly recommend you to see. We don't have time to go because it lasts 20 minutes and we still have only half an hour for finishing my lesson. So we don't actually have time to go through this, but it's really important because it's basically an interview by the car manufacturer of Lamborghini. Lamborghini is owned by a German company, but it's basically produced in Italy. And it's basically an interview that goes back of some years ago. And basically the idea was about developing, when there was the M&A and the big car manufacturer bought Lamborghini, the idea was understanding what Lamborghini was. And, everyone knew Lamborghini as a car manufacturer, but no one knew what Lamborghini actually was. And when they developed an internal audit to understand the perception of the employees about the meaning of Lamborghini, they discovered that different people had different ideas. So they had to work internally to develop a unified culture about the meaning of Lamborghini. And for example, if you have a look at the video, you will discover that Lamborghini stays in a different market compared, for example, to another very famous car manufacturer, Ferrari, for example, because Lamborghini is the bad boy car. which is totally different from the meaning of Ferrari. And basically, if you go through the process, the video will explain you how the company developed its intellectual capital internally to develop a unified vision about the meaning of Lamborghini, and how the company used then this unified vision of Lamborghini. Sorry, guys, I assume you all know what Lamborghini is. I assume it's very well known worldwide. So, but they use it basically when they had to develop new markets, especially in the Asia context, but also in South America, because, while for me, that I'm Italian, Lamborghini has a very specific idea because it's manufactured in Italy. It's a very well-known brand in Italy, but it might have a different meaning in an emerging country where maybe no one knew about Lamborghini. Okay, you can find the video on YouTube. If you need it, I can provide you the link to the video. So if you have 20 minutes, it's really enjoyable and it's really easy also to follow. So please go ahead and have a look at that because it's really, really interesting. So basically, the idea is that, at the beginning, managing IC, and then I'm going to the question that was asked, was, okay, but it started originally with, these companies that had this value that was not able to be explained by traditional accounting rules. But then we had the big bubble of 2001, where all digital companies basically they went bankrupt, or basically a lot of them. So we started understanding the concept that not all rose and sunshine. So we started understanding that not only we have intellectual capital as part of our assets, but we might have also intellectual liabilities, which is a concept very known in accounting. And that's what, I'm trying to answer. Abiseyera and Guthrie in 2004, they started talking about intellectual liability as a depreciation of the intellectual capital. So if for some reason I'm losing some of my competitive advantage, some of the knowledge that I had for some reason, then I actually, in actual fact, I'm getting an intellectual liability. Later on, Garcia Parra, started talking about a non-monetary obligation. So sometimes we have non-monetary obligations that are part of liabilities, not actually represented in our accounting financial statements, and those are part of intellectual liabilities. Giuliani to me gave a very interesting definition when he said, in actual fact, a broader definition might be as a potential non-physical cause of organizational deterioration. So when your organization somehow starts losing traction, losing performance, and that's in actual fact what's happening according to the intellectual liabilities. And in actual fact, if we go back and think about, big challenges, like let's go back and talk about Nokia, okay? Nokia in 2009 had 60% of the global market on mobile phone, 60%, okay? When the iPhone, took place, the CEO of Nokia said, who wants that thing? It's nothing more than a toy. 2 years later, Nokia lost, and 50% of that 60% of global market share. The company went bankrupt, and the reason was because they had intellectual liabilities. Let's go back and see, for example, the innovation of iPhone. If you think about iPhone, probably you're pretty young, and we are talking about things that happened, 11 years ago. So I assume most of you were just kids. But I'm sure that, you know, you heard about that story. And, you know, if you think about the iPhone, maybe you might think that the competitive advantage of the iPhone at the beginning was the fact that it was, you know, touchless. So not touchless, without the keys, so you can just touch it. Was and it was really nice. But in actual fact, that's not the big cause. The big cause was the business model. So iPhone had an idea that it was like a small computer. And like all small computers, you might, you know, buy applications in your computers. And the idea was that they changed the business model, saying, you know, traditional business model of Nokia was developing the app and then putting it available to their customers, even asking an extra price for their app. iPhone said, you know what? I don't want to develop the app. I'm giving, you know, to develop an app, you need something which is called the language, software language. So they said, I'm providing the language for developing apps for free to any software engineer, anyone basically, that wants to try to develop an app. Not only I will provide it for free, I will give them a place where they can try to sell their apps. And I will just share the profit. So no big, entry barriers. Everyone could get it for free. So what happened was that the iPhone had hundreds of thousands of apps entering the system, making the system much better compared to their competitors, full of functionalities that the others couldn't provide because of the different business model. And the real fact, Nokia had a huge intellectual liability, which was based on the structural capital. Their language was closed, you know, the only expert of the language were themselves, okay? Few connections to develop apps, you know, and that's why they lost all the market. Not because of the physical technicalities of the iPhone, but because of the business model mainly. And that's caused a different perception about intellectual capital and started developing new concepts like intellectual liabilities. Okay. I hope that I answered the question about what happens if the IC decreases. Here are the papers that you might refer if you want to read something more. You have here the link, so just, you know, type it and you will get and read a little bit more. Let me see. And you can see, let me see, okay. Those are also examples very interesting. For example, this one was, let's try to consider what happened recently, not so recently, but probably you heard about the data leak of Facebook, you know, Cambridge Analytica, you probably know about that. So back in 1999, Microsoft was accused of having a dominant position. So basically and what happened was that Microsoft, instead of starting a dialogue with the stakeholders, they started acting like being arrogant, saying, it's not true, I'm doing my job, I'm doing the best I can, you are wrong, okay? As a consequence of that attitude, there was the public perception of Microsoft that it was an arrogant company, overreaching monopoly. Microsoft started not being the destination choice of top US university graduates. So it was losing human capital. There has been an exodus of top managers from Microsoft. getting different destinations. So, and that's what we learn from Microsoft. So if you go back at what happened to Facebook, what was the attitude of Facebook with Cambridge Analytica and the Cambridge Analytica scandals? It was totally different. Why? Because they learned from Microsoft. They had a totally different approach. They said, we are very sorry. We didn't know. We will try to understand what happened. Please try to understand that we have a business model which is based on data, but that won't happen again. So totally different. Perception about Microsoft, a perception about Facebook, totally different. Because we learn, because that caused a huge liability for Microsoft about what happened. Okay. Let me check the time. So I still have 15 minutes, if I'm not wrong. Another example of a paper. I will not go through this because I want to spend some time on the last part, which is the ecosystem perspective, the fourth stage. So I already introduced it a little bit earlier when I said, okay, the first stages were basically focused on understanding that the value of a company stays or lies within its IC. But in actual fact, do you think that a big company like Mercedes or Ferrari or any of those big companies can actually succeed only focusing on internal intellectual capital? Well, that's very unlikely, because in actual fact, the ability of those big companies to succeed is strongly connected with the ability of its suppliers, of their suppliers to succeed. So that means that if you have, if those big companies want to succeed, they can't only focus on the internal intellectual capital. They must have an ecosystem perspective. So what happens is that now big groups now are pushing their suppliers, their partners, they are supporting them in developing their intellectual capital, because they understand that if their ability to succeed strongly connects to the ability of their suppliers, of their partners to succeed. And if you're a multinational company, then you have the responsibility. And that's what happened, for example, during the economic crisis of 2008, that those big companies financially supported small suppliers because they needed them. That's what happened, for example, in Italy, when there was this big discussion about, you know, Italy has a strong industrial, you know, sector with many manufacturing companies, but we do have also a huge national debt. Okay, so there was this, and there was this discussion in Germany about, you know, kicking off Italy from EU. You know what happened? That in German entrepreneurs, this was in the news, you can check, double check what I'm saying, started discussing with the government saying, we can't let Italy to stay outside of EU. We need Italy because most of our suppliers are from Italy. If Italy goes bankrupt, Germany will follow, because we will, you know, lose most of our top partners, top suppliers. The ecosystem perspective started growing. And what happened was that it became even valuable at the national level. So this is something that you might find on BCG, Boston Consulting Group. And basically it's, as you can see here, it's the cost of average manufacturing index in 2014. As you can see, you have all the countries. You have main reasons of cost at the national level. And as you can see, we have countries like Australia, where, you know, on a basis of 100, which is the average cost for, you know, I took Italy since I'm Italian, it's much higher. But then we have, for example, India, which is much lower. So question for those countries is, how can we survive in a world where we do have those differences in costs regarding the manufacturing activities? Well, the overall discussion that it started was about national intellectual capital. Even though the cost of manufacturing is higher in those countries, try to have a look in, for example, we see United States, let's see, I can't find it, but anyway, even though it is really high, let's, France, let's, building things in France is even more expensive than in Italy. Australia, much more expensive. Switzerland. However, Belgium, here, Germany should be here, Germany, a little bit less, not that much. But Germany, as we all know, is a big manufacturing country. How is that possible, even though the cost of manufacturing things is much higher? Well, that's possible thanks to national intellectual capital, because the productivity of the country is much higher. And it is much higher because, as an average, German engineers are very productive because they are well educated, because their companies have big brands. Everyone knows about, the German cars. So here is the book that I told you, where basically Edvinson and Yen-Yun Lin discussed about the intellectual capital and the crisis. And as you can see, all the those very, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Spain, they had very bad rankings. You can have a look at their book if you want. Goran Rus in 2017, as you know, Goran Rus was a consultant for the Australian government, discussing about the role of keeping some manufacturing production within the country. And he basically said that we must develop intellectual capital of the nation, which means that we do not have to, we have to keep complex economies, also keeping manufacturing activities. So unfortunately, I'm running out of time, but what I'm saying is that, what we started having in the fourth stage was the discussion of an ecosystem perspective. Basically, where you can't focus only on company. Big companies must focus on their overall ecosystem. Countries must focus on their overall production system, using this approach on intellectual capital. Last part is if you start extending the boundaries of intellectual capital, and it becomes even a national thing, well, you might understand that intellectual capital and sustainability, like, for example, social issues, they start overlap, And because of that, now, if you think about the reporting, intellectual capital reporting is starting overlapping with the GRI and everything that connects with sustainability. And the reason is that because if as a company I have to take into consideration the national human capital, of the human capital of my whole ecosystem, that means that somehow I'm starting having a sustainable perspective of my production. Because I can survive not only if I have, good engineers in my company, but I must be able to guarantee that the universities of my country will provide good engineers also for the future. And if I'm a very big company, I do have this social responsibility. And that's where intellectual capital started overlapping with sustainability. And that's why, as you said, Ibrahim, at the beginning, I'm also, I don't want to say I'm an expert, but I studied sustainability. And that's because I moved from my original research not because I moved, because my research topic moved in actual fact. Okay. So let me see if there's something more. Okay. In the slides, I won't annoy you with all this detail, but I will provide you examples for a study that I developed, where basically big companies, you see, they developed sustainable actions, economic sustainability, social sustainability, environmental sustainability. And what they actually found was that, for example, developing social sustainability, they were able, for example, to increase the human capital of their company, because they were able, for example, to align cultures, value, and causes. They were able to guarantee diversity, which, as you know, is a very important topic for supporting innovation. They were able to use collective intelligence, so basically grabbing ideas from external stakeholders. Same thing using the relational capital. They were able to assess ethical indexes or increase accountability and transparency. And that's, as you know, it's very important for relational capital. Or for structural capital, basically developing new ICT tools to support accountability and transparency. For example, one of the things that I'm studying now is blockchain technology. And as you know, blockchain is strongly related with, blockchain is the technology that stays behind the Bitcoin, but basically is nothing more than a general ledger where all transactions are recorded. The only thing is that the technology itself, it allows you to have the transactions that cannot be deleted or modified. So it's nothing more than an accounting system, nothing more than that. Basically, what we are seeing is that, especially when applied to healthcare system, especially in developing countries, this system is providing sustainability because it allows a better, it improves the whole supply chain. When you talk about healthcare system is very important, especially nowadays. But what happens is also that is increasing accountability and transparency, reducing briberies, risks, and all those elements. So what I'm saying, trying to summarize, is that the first stage is basically going beyond the boundaries of the company. Going beyond of the boundaries of the company, big companies have to start thinking broadly, in a broader way, sorry. And because they are doing that, somehow intellectual capital is overlapping with the topic of sustainability. And you might find some studies like the one that I provided you, where I provided you examples of actions taken by companies that were actually addressing sustainable issues, but as a fact, they had an improvement in their intellectual capital. I think that that's enough. Let me see. Okay, so also other example from the surgery. Okay, the last one is a network of the Future Alliance, which is a topic of future center studies, basically, that are discussing about intellectual capital and how the topic has been developed and probably will be developed in the near future. As I said, even though we went through 4 different stages, there's still so much that we have to know about each step. I think I have a few questions here in the chat. Let me see.
Yes, Prof. You have 2 questions. The first one from Paulina and the second one from Rian, but Rian will ask you directly. Okay. I'm a final year student of accounting. I would like to ask about the measurement of IC. Which measurement are best to measure IC? Thank you. So in actual fact, I don't have an answer here. I think that the most important thing is that you have to understand why you want to measure it. So what is your key motivation? If it is based on
managerial, and by the fact that you want to manage it, probably a balanced scorecard approach, a scorecard approach is the best one. But if instead you want to, for example, discuss with a bank, maybe other measures like the EVA and the other approaches that I provided you are better, because you don't want to basically understand what's going on behind the scenes. You want to provide a value to a bank which is interested in understanding the potentiality of your organization. So in actual fact, I don't think you can get an answer to your question, because it strongly depends on the reasons why you want to measure IC. Okay. And then the second one, you said she will ask me, or he will ask me.
Mas Rian, yeah, you can ask Professor Masaru directly if you want.
Thank you, Professor Ibrahim Wijaya. So good afternoon, Mr. Mauricio. So I have two questions for you. My name is Rian Subagio. I'm from accounting students from 11 Maret University. So the first one, how can we grow our business with the big data algorithm? Is that any like related case between the IC, the intellectual capitals, between the algorithm itself? Do we have to like research upon the intellectual capital first to build our algorithm? And the second one, I'm very curious and very interested in talking about leakage of public personal data, leakage of public personal data. It happens, which you mentioned before about Facebook with the Cambridge Analytica scandals. So probably a few months ago, Indonesia has problems between the personal data of the citizens. Someone has just paid for it with some company, such as which company has a like its personal data from healthcare of the government. So who is like more responsible for this, and what is your recommendations to provide a security of our personal data to maintaining the personal data itself in the company? Thank you, sir.
Sure. So thank you so much. Two very interesting questions. I will try to provide you some detailed answers. So the first one is, how can we grow using big data? So big data is really a growing topic that is really attracting many scholars studying it, and it has many implications for IC. First of all, big data is often used, for example, for increasing brand awareness. So you might, if you want to develop your, for example, the power of your brand, big data is really important, because you can connect it and see how people are reacting to your campaigns. You can see how things are, have been developed. And the fact that, it was mentioned even before in a chat, like Ronaldo just moved a bottle because he has so many followers in a big data system, and that caused Coca-Cola to lose 2% of its value. So what I'm saying is that big data is first might be used to increase other capitals, relational capital first, but also human capital. Because as you said, some headhunters are using data gathered from LinkedIn or other tools for basically getting the best talents. Just to give you an example, nowadays in my country, one of the big discussion is how to finance education. Well, what is happening is that we have companies that are started providing collaterals to finance your education. As an exchange, They want all the data of your exams, of your career, or everything. So basically, they want to become LinkedIn before you enter LinkedIn, because LinkedIn starts from when you start entering the job market. But there's no data before about you, about your potentiality. What if we start collecting all those data? And to get the data, I have to provide you a collateral so you can get a loan to finance your studies. So data algorithm is really helpful to support the development of human capital, relational capital, and is of course part of the structural capital. There is still much to know about that. We still are using a very small percentage of the total data that are provided. And there are big opportunities of increasing the data. You know, it has been said that if we could increase, for example, the use of big data for health system, we can have savings in order of trillions worldwide. Try to imagine, just to give you an example, maybe you learn about the iWatch that saved lives because it was able to prevent heart attacks. And this is only an example of how we can basically develop. And this, of course, causes and might cause a lot of opportunities for companies to grow. And of course, there are challenges, because when you have data that has been published somewhere, then it might be under attack by hackers. Governments might take, might use it or even sell it, as it happened for Cambridge Analytica. My research area, I'm specializing on blockchain now. Well, there is a lot of attention on blockchain because blockchain might provide a solution. Because as I said, it's nothing more than a general ledger. It's transparently observable, but is anonymized. You need a key to understand the person that stays behind that data. And that will provide you somehow. There are studies that are trying to understand the system, showing how a blockchain system might provide you anonymity. So you might stay anonymous without getting your personal data, stolen. But there is a big question: who's going to pay for that? Because of course, the whole blockchain system works because the miners that are there, that are paid because they can, let's say, print coin, a new Bitcoin, or because they might get a fee due to the transaction. If we have a blockchain system that manages data like personal data, who's going to pay for that? The government? Who's going to be the overall method? And this is a really huge discussion. In Europe, as you know, we have the GDPR, which is basically the general rule for managing data. But there is a huge discussion. And the fact that, for example, United States have a different rules compared to what we might consider as sensible data compared to Europe, this itself is providing a big challenge. Okay, so there is no easy answer to your question. But what I'm saying is that maybe, and that's what I'm studying now, technology itself could provide us a third way, a third path that we might try to see, to use to solve the problem. Okay. I think, sorry, I lost. I think, Rina.
You have two questions from two students.
Okay, the one from Rina, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Rina, I've read several journals. Then there are journals that stages EC consists of 3 components, namely AC, structural capital, and there is another journal where it says it consists of capital employed, as there's a difference between relational capital and capital employed. So yes, as I said, the classification that I gave you is one of the most accepted, but you might have differences. It's not capital employed, it's capital efficiency, to what I understand. It's not human capital. You might also find social capital rather than relational capital. And those are all different that you might find within literature. As I said, unfortunately, for example, in the United States, it's called intangible capital, not intellectual capital. So we still have these differences between countries. Unfortunately, there's no easy answer to your question. You just have to understand the person that is writing and try to put the article that you read within an existing framework or theory, okay? Social capital is much more developed in social studies rather than in relational capital, much more in accounting studies, for example. Alma. Hello, Prof. My name is Alma. Nice to meet you, Alma. I'm a student in accounting study program. I would like to ask you if intellectual capital is also an asset, should it also be depreciated? I think assets such as human capital will only increase over time, or is it supposed to be depreciated instead of? Yes, of course, you don't have to depreciate it. It would make much more sense if you have to put in your balance sheet to have a fair value, where to see, period after period, if you can still keep the value of your intangibles. I think we have, sorry, is there any absence for this event? I don't understand the question.
It's not the question, Prof.
Okay.
You want to sign the attendance list, actually.
Okay.
We have another question, Prof.
Okay.
Yeah, from Nika. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I am Nika. Nice to meet you, Nika, from AFB UNS. I want to ask you, mostly research is based on the financial statement or profit-oriented companies. In your opinion, what are the for intellectual capital research in non-profit organizations such as foundation? It's pretty high, the opportunity that you might have in different companies, especially because the conditions. Try to think about public organizations. In many countries, they have different rules about how to hire people and fire people. Okay. Additionally, even though if you focus on public entities again, then you might have national public entities, municipality, but even like the European Union, like the NATO, so there are many, you have many sovereign national organizations that you might study. And of course, also non-profit educational institutions. What I can tell you is that if you focus on non-profit oriented companies, most of the research is focused on educational institutions. Why? Because unfortunately, academics are lazy. And because they are lazy, it means that, they tend to study something that is pretty close to them. So because they all work in universities, studying at university is something pretty easy for them. Okay, so my suggestion is try to go a little bit further. I'm giving you some examples of very interesting, but it's full of organizations that you might study. Even changing the sector might be interesting. I have a paper where I focus, for example, on national soccer teams. Why? Because for national soccer teams have different rules. They are temporary teams. But the idea was that I was studying that because, it's easy to get data for national soccer teams, but because they are temporary teams, but you might apply those rules also to, for example, joint ventures. So every time you have a team that has been developed to solve a specific problem, grabbing people, maybe even from different organizations. Okay, and the rules here are different. So I strongly encourage you to study those topics because they are very, very relevant. Okay.
Yeah, I think, is there any questions? Yeah, I think there is no more question, Professor Massaro. Thank you very much for your presentation, Professor Masaru. I particularly like your insight in the beginning of your presentation about the digital era can attack the basic concept of accounting, recording the transaction. And I really enjoy your presentation as well, and I really enjoy your teaching method as well. And I believe our school will invite you again to give another online lecture in the near future.
Okay.
And yeah, I hope after the pandemic we can invite you to visit our campus, I think, yeah. And thank you very much. Would you please to join me to thank you again to Professor Masaru, and I give the opportunity back to the Master of Ceremony, Mbak Rizka. Thank you very much, Prof. Masaru.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was really my pleasure. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for Mr. Ibrahim Fatwa Wijaya, PhD. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we end the session, I will remind you to fill your present link that already we share in the chat room. It is the link to the get the e-certificate. Okay, the team please share the link, and the next we will take the photos first for our documentation. So all the participants, please turn on your camera. Okay, be ready. Yeah. Okay, I will counting down. In 3, 2, 1. Once more. And 3, 2, 1, smile. All right, thank you very much for the ladies and gentlemen. Finally, we are in the end of the session. It has been great and wonderful day with all of you guys. And also, I would like to say thank you again to our special speakers, Professor Maurizio Massaro from Hafuskeri University. And please forgive me if I make any mistake during the process being an MC. Okay, make sure you fill the link of present link. And that's all for today. Good afternoon from Indonesia. See you in another session. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Santi Santi Om, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Thank you all. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.